welcome to All About the Joy. In the house is Cynthia Ruiz Lopez, Rick Costa, and our wonderful guest, Albert. I'm going to say your name wrong, so let me just see if I did it right, okay? Albert Bramante?
Bramante.
Bramante. I'm so sorry. Albert Bramante. It's so nice to meet you. I always tell people where I meet them so that our audience knows. I've never met you. You're people, or you reached out to me on an email. I kind of did a little Google search and I was like, oh, here's a Hollywood insider. Let's have him on the show. So we're not big Hollywood people. I work here in the industry. Rick and Cynthia are fans. Is that fair enough, guys? I think that's fair.
Yeah.
And we criticize every movie and television show that comes out. So there's that, you know.
Okay.
But I really want to talk to you first about why you found your way to Hollywood, why talent manager, and why psychologist. So let's first talk with why Hollywood.
Well, I was always interested in creativity.
Mhm.
I don't like to use the word black sheep, but I'm the white sheep of the family. So I
Wait,
was
what does
born
that
in,
mean? What does that
so,
mean?
so I was born in, I'm the youngest of five. So I have three brothers, one sister, and everyone in my family, my father, my cousins, my uncles, my siblings, were all athletes. You know, that one of them were football coaches, baseball coaches. I had zero athletic prowess, ability, or interest.
Okay.
I loved books. That was my sanctuary, books. And so what led me to, but I was always interested in creativity as well and sort of performing, not necessarily as an actor, but I was interested in just, the whole thing about creativity. So
So
in
you
high school,
so you enjoyed molding other people, or you were also an actor when you were younger?
sort of, I was I was an aspiring actor for when I was younger. I
Okay.
really wasn't a full-time actor. I loved being around actors. Now, I was in
Mhm.
high school, I was in a drama club. In college, during my undergrad, I majored in psychology, minored in communications, and I took, three, theater classes as electives. Two of them were actor related, one was on the theater in general. And I
Okay.
really enjoyed it. Those are like my favorite classes. And then when I went to grad school, and after that, I found myself working in New York City around the
Okay.
time of 9/11.
Mhm.
And so I did some volunteer work with some people. I was working also in the social services nonprofit sector, but I was also doing some volunteer work. And I found myself working with some artist foundations and artist groups and advocacy groups. And I really enjoyed being around them. And everyone would say, oh, you should be an actor. And I did it for 2 years. I was in a couple of commercials, a couple of short films.
Okay.
And, but what I found was I really didn't enjoy it, but I enjoyed being around actors,
I
being
totally
around
understand that. I understand that.
creatives.
Mhm.
It was like these are my people. This
Love
is my
that.
tribe. And I feel comfortable with actors and creatives rather than academics. Because I did the academic
Mm.
conference route for,
Right.
years. And I always found them to be boring and snooty, elitist,
Okay.
which I'm not.
That's-
So
Totally agree
We
with
don't want
that.
wait, we don't want any emails. You can send them all to Albert for all the elitists watching our show. No, go ahead. It's all good.
yeah. So and I didn't feel I was a part of that, but I felt such at home with these actors
Mm-hmm.
and just even creative people. They're like filmmakers and non actors, but people that were in the industry, writers. I just felt such at home, and so I wanted to still work with them, but not obviously not being an actor myself. When I was also acting, I would meet actors, I'd befriend actors on set, and I would actually be showing them casting calls and saying to them, I think you'd be right for this role.
Oh, okay. So for
And
people in our audience who don't know what a casting call is, I know it might sound very obvious to those of us in the industry, but basically it's a notice that you get from the studios or from whoever's doing a film, or if, New York, you're in New York, right? So it'd be like
Yes.
Broadway, whatever. Casting call would be a sheet that comes out and says all of the shows that are available and all the actors they're looking for, and you should come in to audition, is pretty much the gist of it. They want everyone who's a brunette, 5'6" or above, or something like that. And if you can sing and tap dance or something like that, and everyone
They actually
shows
did
up.
that. They did that here in Boston when they were looking for extras for Walking Dead.
Yeah. So extras are a little bit different. So casting calls can be both, but usually they're looking for, he's talking about like principal actors or people who character actors. So people coming in to do a role probably on a TV show.
Yeah, it was, and none of them were not open calls, but you still were places you had to submit your headshot and resume, and then you were invited to audition if they felt that you were a match. But I was finding it was like, oh, you should submit for that, you should submit for that, and a couple of actors said, wow, you could be my unofficial agent.
Oh.
And that my wheels started turning. Okay,
Right.
so. And then I started helping, behind the scenes. I volunteered at film festivals. Like I was part of the, volunteered with the inaugural Tribeca Film Festival in New York. So I really just enjoy, and I would put together like acting panels at different film festivals.
Wow.
And I realized I love actors. And so the natural progression is, why don't I rep them? And this is 2004. I started my first company.
Is that
And
was that Emerge Talent?
Emerging Talent, yes.
Emerging Talent. Okay.
So I did that up until about 2020 during the pandemic. And at that time, I had started partnering with another agent, and we combined companies and became bona fide emerging artists, which I had for 3 years after that.
So
And,
I'm gonna interrupt a little bit, because can you tell people what a talent agent does? Because I think people get confused by talent agent and manager.
Sure.
So,
They, the lines have blurred a little bit over the years, but an agent does day-to-day work. So like we'll find the breakdowns, like the casting calls for professional things, to film, TV, theater, commercial projects. Basically, they're filming in the New York area or that are casting out of New York, and then we match our actors for those roles.
Right.
And that now a manager is someone who's more hands-on. So they're the ones that would be like kind of like the consigliere of the actor, the the confidant, the one that helps them with choose classes, choose headshots, branding materials, and all of that stuff.
They do more big picture career stuff. The agent actually hustles to get you the actual job and audition. So you would be like, Carmen, you need to go. This is, Steven Spielberg, blah, 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 whatever. And you would send that out, and I would go to that audition. A manager would be like, we don't know if you want to work with Steven Spielberg, which in that moment I would fire the manager, because who would have worked with Spielberg? But go ahead, Albert.
Yeah, or they would at least say, okay, they would work with you and say, okay, you want to work with Steven Spielberg? Here's what you need to do.
Right.
Here's the steps you need. Here's the portfolio you need. Here's the materials you would need. So it's more of a, like you said, the big picture. And they sometimes will communicate with the agent.
Right.
Whereas myself, I mean, we do a lot of career consulting, even on our end. Not as much, because again, my focus primarily is to find work.
Right. Right.
And which if I had
for the actor. Right.
So if I had conversations all the time and did more of the hand holding, I wouldn't have enough time to be an agent, which would then take away my bottom line.
Right. Right. Which makes total sense. So I'm sorry. I just want to make sure, because, I didn't want this to become just all about acting. I really want you to get into how you got into becoming a PhD in psychology, but I digress. I'll let you keep going.
So it was like kind of like, because my partner had bona fide artists, I then, we merged together for 3 years. We did that. And then, there were a couple of other reasons besides I just wanted to change. So that was during the writer's strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike of 23. I decided to rebrand my agency, go back on my own, and I started Bramante Artists, which was founded January 1st, 2024. And I did that to be a little professional because while the emerging umbrella worked for me for many years, that was not the message anymore. I was like, I'm now working with established artists. So,
Mm.
and most agencies kind of operate out of their name, the names of the owners. So that's why I was like, that was my decision to, change it to Bramante Artists. For many years, I worked with emerging talent, and most of the people now that are on my roster are not new actors.
They look like
So,
character actors. It seems like you have a proficiency to work with up and coming talent and character actors. Is that
yes,
correct?
yeah. I work with all types. I mean, but I would say 80% of my roster are character actors.
Right. Right.
However, the character actors are more in demand now
Oh, of course they are. I mean,
because
so
they
but maybe we have to. And Albert, I'm so sorry. I just really like to make sure our audience who doesn't really know, this is not to
sure. No,
act
no,
like
no,
my
no.
audience is dumb, because they're not. Our audience is amazing.
They're not.
But
I
I'm
know
also
that.
just trying to get a refresher for myself. I'm just using the audience as an excuse. You see what I'm doing there?
I
So,
works too. So
yeah. So can we just distinguish between what a leading actor would be and a character actor, and why those two are so important, and what you mean by the character actor is probably more in demand now?
so leading actor, stereotypical Hollywood, blonde hair, blue eyed, bombshell, or
Mm.
even a attractive brunette, or the leading man, the
Brad
attractive
Pitt. Yep.
Brad Pitt,
Mhm.
um, like Tom Cruise,
Yeah.
those types would be considered leading or Hollywood actors.
Leading actors tend to be someone who supposedly can carry a film or a TV show on their own.
Yes.
Right? They tend to be someone who, like, is a Denzel Washington, right? Or he's older, but still kind of that whole, they can carry a film and a TV show on their own. You probably know their name, so that's a leading actor. So go ahead, Albert. A character actor
Yeah.
is what?
Now, character actors are those that are, maybe offbeat, quirky, you know, average, can be overweight, average, can be everyday people in a
Everyday
sense.
people.
So, but they're becoming more in demand. And an example that I think your audience can relate to is Steve Buscemi.
Yep.
Mm.
Steve Buscemi, if you look at him from the outside, he's a definite character of a character actor.
Yeah.
A
He's
very
amazing.
specific, very niche type of actor.
Or
He's either
George
going to be
Wendt, who we just lost from Cheers,
yeah,
was
Yeah.
absolutely a character actor. Yeah.
not only that, but Chris Farley, for instance, would be a character actor.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's those types of actors that are starting to become more in demand. Like, you can, Steve Buscemi is not a character actor; he's a leading actor. He carried TV
That's
shows.
right. That's right.
He can lead movies.
Or how about Jennifer Coolidge? She's,
Yes.
Yeah.
she's a
Hmm.
character actress who now is kind of in demand ridiculously.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there was like an expose, I forget which publication, but she was saying like she found much more success in later life than
Yes.
she did, in her earlier years. So it's really about capitalizing on that. So I like working with all types. So if you look at my roster, I have every ethnicity covered.
Mm-hmm.
I have, from kids to, performers over 80.
Mm-hmm. I saw your
Years of
roster.
age.
I went on IMDb. I did my research, sir. I did.
Okay. All right.
I did
Good.
my
Thank you.
research.
So I have a quick question. So, do you only look for talent for movies and TV, or do you also work for like Broadway, or is that separate?
No, I did Broadway, national tours, cruise ship entertainers. Because a lot of times they'll there's Broadway shows that are on cruises.
Hmm.
As entertainment, I book a lot. Some of those. Like I currently have two clients right now. One is on a tour of the Addams Family musical, and another was on tour of Annie the musical, the
Nice.
national
Okay.
tour.
That's really
So
fun that you're doing that. Like, I mean, the way you're talking about being a talent agent makes it actually kind of fun. Because
Right.
usually in this town, I'll just let you know, in this town, we don't love our agents, right? Because we're always like, why aren't they getting us to work?
well, I get a lot of that. Not gonna lie, but I think the one thing now is the industry has changed,
Yes.
Mm.
drastically in the past 10 years and 5 years completely,
Yeah.
to a point where it's totally different than what it was 5 years ago.
Right.
So there's kind of a recession right now we're in.
Hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of actors are getting frustrated with their agents and their managers because we're struggling too
Right.
right now.
Right. Right. Well, you have no idea about this because you don't know me, but now we're going to be best friends. I work for a lot of production houses, right? So a lot of my clients own the production houses. So we don't have a lot of work. Like the work we're working on is work we booked a while back because like one place is post production. So you start to see the dwindling when you're not seeing the work coming in
Hmm.
because the movie's finished, right? Because we're at the back end of things. So it's really fascinating to see. I mean, when you say we're in a recession, you're talking about the film industry. It's really on its legs. It's like everyone's trying to pivot. Everyone's trying to do something different because
Yeah,
Hollywood's changing. Yeah.
it's changing, especially when we had, for those of you who don't, again, who's not in the industry, 2023, we had two major strikes.
Yeah.
We had the
Mhm.
Writers Guild strike and the Screen Actors Guild strike.
Right.
And they lasted a lot longer than we anticipated.
Right.
And they also, the fact that they were together made it
Yeah.
even like kind of like a double punch there.
Mm.
Yeah.
And also, there was a lot of talk when it was coming down to it. Oh, there's going to be a bunch of work. There's going to be everyone's going to open their doors. It's going to be be prepared. And unfortunately, I haven't seen that
Right. And
yet.
there's a lot that happened too. So I'm SAG. So everyone, I wore my shirt on the show every other time, right? I think guys, like we were protesting, but I think also, so we came off of COVID, right? So the industry
Yeah,
had a little painful, like every other industry during COVID. Then we had the strikes, the writer strike, the actor strike, and all the other little strikes that were happening along the way. And then
Mm.
after that, AI jumped in.
Mm.
yes. Uh,
Yes. Mhm.
this is you mentioned AI, and it's interesting because especially for the voiceover industry, as I feel is really
Mhm.
threatened right here because
Mhm.
of you now have companies that are doing like AI generated audiobooks
Right. Right.
and voice
Wow.
cloning, and where's the legality behind that?
Right.
Um,
It's a tough
so
one. It's a tough one. Yeah. I just spoke to a friend of mine yesterday, Rob, he actually had a different take on AI and voiceover work. He had mentioned that he's like, what if you are licensing your voice and every time they're using it, you're getting paid for it, but you don't have to do the work? I'm like, yeah, but we're not there yet. Like, that's not actually what's happening. Yeah.
that would be in an ideal world, and that's where
Mm.
I'm kind of hoping that that SAG really the union has to lobby this, otherwise it's going to get out of control.
Right. Right.
And now, we're talking. I'm hearing chatter about, oh, we're going to make AI movies
Oh, they're
now.
already doing it. I just saw a clip on it on TikTok. Google has just introduced, I think yesterday, the ability they're making shorts and movies already with crowds and yeah, it's scary. Sorry. I just saw that
Yeah,
yesterday. It freaked me out.
and I think what's also threatened is like if you're an extra, a background actor,
Hmm.
because now they're talking about, well, you can just CGI crowd
Mm.
scenes,
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and therefore it saves the production lots of
Okay,
money
but
from that
here's the
higher.
argument. Okay, but I'm going to argue with you because again, I had this conversation with Rob. Here's what he said. He's like, the movie Ben-Hur is a great example of how they didn't have thousands and thousands of extras, right? We've been manipulating crowd scenes forever in movies. AI is just making it easier. How do I
Okay,
argue that? How do I argue that with him? Because
well, it may be making it easier, but at the same time, are they? What is it? Why are the studios using AI? Are they doing it if they're doing it to save money? What? And I don't really have a stake in this because I don't work with background actors, so I
Right.
can't. But I am concerned about that because I even heard like, companies saying that, oh, we don't really have to hire background actors anymore.
Right. No, no, no. Hey, I'm on Team Albert here. I agree with you. I don't, I'm
Yeah.
just saying I had this
No,
conversation yesterday. It was fascinating because on the one hand, I love AI. Okay. They've heard me on the show with my AI. I love AI.
so do I.
Yeah. On the other hand, we're in a place where we don't know how it's going to fit in and where is creativity and how does that work? How do we as human beings who are creative artists still be creative artists in lieu of AI?
Yeah, and my position is I love AI, but we definitely need to have some sort of break a little bit, like some brakes on it,
Yeah.
or controls on it
Or
before it gets
regulations. There should be
yeah
regulations.
regulations
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But that's
before
probably
it,
not
it
going to
can get
happen.
out of control.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. Okay, wait. I want to shift back for a moment because we lost our way into Hollywood and we got
Sure.
away from Albert. How did you get into getting your PhD in psychology, and how does that help
Yes.
you and your actors and what you're doing
So,
today?
so I already had my master's by the time I started with the whole
Oh,
acting world, and even in high school, I always wanted a PhD, and
oh,
that was like my goal. And so, and I think I wanted to, well, I mean, part of my motivation was to complete it, just for
mhm.
um, my own, sense of satisfaction, but also to kind of, I guess, please my family a bit, like,
Yeah.
okay, I am not neglecting this. And also at the time, I was also a college professor too.
Okay.
Mm.
So I kind of needed that too. So I was like, might as well just complete it. I'm already like halfway there.
Right.
So I enrolled in an online program, Walden University, and this was back in 2005. And initially was going to go for a PhD in clinical psychology, and then other things happened, and I just switched to straight psychology, educate more of an educational psychology.
Okay.
So how I bridged the two was when I started my agency. It was right around the same time I was starting the PhD process. And I kept running into an issue with actors. And the issue that I was kept running into, or the concern that I was having, is many of them were self-sabotaging.
Self-sabotaging. Okay. That's
And
not
I
just for
couldn't,
actors though, but yeah, go ahead.
right. Yeah, well, we all self-sabotage, everyone, from all walks of life. But I was noticing prevalently with actors that so many of them were like blowing off auditions, not showing up for auditions.
Are you serious?
And I couldn't figure that out because I was like, so many actors would kill for this audition you just blew off. So I couldn't figure it out, but it was happening a couple more times. I was like, I need to investigate this. And the biggest one of the I think the one incident that happened to me, I had an audition for someone who had a series regular role. It was one of
Wow.
the I think it was Nickelodeon. And it was a series
Okay.
regular role. An hour before the audition, I get a phone call from her saying, "I can't do this," and she just hung up, and I never heard from her again.
Wow.
And I
Mhm.
when I was then so fast forward to go back to the PhD when we started to we went to an in-person retreat and we had to do our dissertation like topic
Right.
idea because part
Hmm.
of being a PhD you have to almost write a book
Right.
essentially.
Yep.
It's a large scale research study, and our advisor said you should do it from something that concerns you, a question.
Mm.
And at that time, I was like, "What's wrong with these actors?"
What's
Kept
wrong
going
with
down my mind.
That's great. I love it.
So I went into my advisor's office, and I was like, "This is going to go either two ways. Either I'm going to get laughed at, or they're going to like it."
Yeah.
So I walked in there, and they were like, "This is great,"
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's where that was born. And
Is that where the
so
book Rise Above the Script came from?
yes, it was based on the outline and on the dissertation. I
Hmm.
wanted to write a book for years because it was like 9 years after my dissertation is when I published a book. So, and for the readers who know, dissertations are great, but they're not readable easily.
Right, right,
Mm.
right.
My family and friends who were very supportive of me, were like, "Oh, you wanted to? I want to read it," and I think they read the first page and they were done. It's like I can't, because
Understood.
if you're not in the field, it reads like stereo instructions, pretty
Right,
Uh-huh.
much. It's like
right,
over your head. So I was like, okay, I want to take this in from the knowledge that I gained from it and put it in a readable format,
right.
Mhm.
So let me just
and we
tell
can look
people
at.
also for the audio. The name of the book is Rise Above the Script. There's a subtitle to it though, too. I didn't write it down, Albert. What is
Sure,
it?
sure. It's confronting self-doubt and mastering self-sabotage for performing artists.
Okay. So Rise Above the Script, and you can get that on Amazon. I have not read it yet, but I am going to read it. It has a lot of good reviews on Amazon, so I'm excited
Thank
to
you.
check that out.
I did read it,
So
by the way.
Thank
I have a question.
Wait,
So
Rick, you already read it?
Audiobook, yeah.
you.
Okay, go ahead, Cynthia. You have a question. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Wow.
so you speak about self-sabotage and with, the psychology and everything. So I know someone who will put excuse me, put everyone else out there and like say this person is great, they should be in this role, blah blah blah, but they will not do it for themselves.
Oh my God. You know what's so
And I
weird?
wonder why.
Wait, the minute you started talking, I'm like, what? I already knew where you were you think I'm not gonna fight with you on here because we got a guest now? Honey, this is my
I'll just sit
show,
back with a
baby.
popcorn. It's fine.
Let the ladies fight.
Wait,
Well,
wait, wait. She's confused, Albert. All right, I'll let Albert answer, and then I'm gonna put in my because this is not about me. Good question.
here's the thing, though, and I think this may be related to what you were talking about. We're very good at promoting other people than ourselves. We're
That's
very
true.
good at telling other people, the accomplishments of other people, and it's like, okay, now talk about you, and people freeze up. That's one of the hardest job interview questions that usually are asked is, tell me about
Yeah.
yourself.
Right. But wait, Cynthia, you think I freeze up? That's what you think is happening with me?
I don't think you freeze up, but I don't think you give yourself the, that whole like oomph that you give other people.
Yeah. I think so, Albert. I just feel like this is weird, but I'm gonna have this conversation right now. We're gonna do this.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I think you keep confusing my not wanting to oversell something. Like you guys hype me up so much and I appreciate it. But again, I'll say it again. Those are accomplishments that you think are accomplishments. To me, that's just been survival. I have things on my list that I want to accomplish that I haven't been able to accomplish. So Albert, they get upset with me because I'm like, I still haven't done my, 6 things on my list that I want to do. And they're like, oh, but you've done all this. Oh my God. And it's like, I'm not saying all that stuff isn't valid. I'm saying all that stuff is what you think is amazing and great. That's nothing that I went to do. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm about to get a therapy session. I see what you did. Oh my God.
Yeah, I'm a little afraid how to answer. No, I'm just saying because I'm like I'm inclined to agree with them actually.
No,
Because
Albert, it was nice to have you on the show. Goodbye.
this is when I'm getting kicked out. Okay, but no, I think again we downplay the accomplishments too. Like for example, even actors like, oh, congratulations, booked the role, and they're like, yeah, I think they just gave it to me. No, you booked the role. I see that happening a lot with like, oh, you won this award. Well, they give an award out to everybody. No, you won an award. Take stock in that. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a list of wanting to do more, and not settling. I think that is definitely valid to talk about not settling and having that list of 6 things, but do celebrate what you do achieve and then say, okay, now I'm going to set out to do this on my list. Next on my list. Okay, great.
Everyone to know that this is Cynthia's last time on the show. Like, we're so done. Okay, wait. I'm just gonna push back because it was towards me. I know not you, Albert, but I'm just gonna push back on my situation just a little bit, I think there's also a difference, right? Especially living here in Santa Monica. I live here in Hollywood. I work in this town, right? Not I am an actor, but I don't work as an actor, and I haven't done it for a long time. Okay, and as much as I would love to still be performing, there's a difference between being the talent and the business end of things. And if you don't have the right connections, if you don't have the ability to, go out to audition 3-4 times a week and, have a roof over your head, sometimes you got to make a decision. And that's the decision I made, was to work. You know what I mean? The way I work.
Mhm.
Okay. So in this town, because I work for so many high level celebrity executive types, what ends up happening is you see the actors that come in who are so pompous and so conceited, people who walk like there's the other extreme. And I have to tell you what ends up happening when they leave the room, the casting office, when they walk out of the office, whatever it is, people hate these people. Like you hear the discussion. So it's a really fine line. Like, Cynthia, I know you want me to walk around and be like, you know what? Hey, Hollywood, I got you. First of all, not my style. And secondly, it's just because I cringe at the others. And you see that more so than not. I mean, Albert, you tell me what you think, because maybe I'm wrong.
But I can see what you're saying there, and I think what that comes is there's a chapter in the book where I talk about like toxic high self-esteem, and that's what I think what you're describing right now is the pompousness, the arroganceness, the inauthentic. That's what it's inauthentic,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it's fake and it's phony, and anybody can see right through that, the
Yep.
fake and phoniness. And that's why it's not attractive. And the reason why I have a chapter in the book is because I kind of correlate that to self-sabotage.
Oh, okay. So Cynthia, that's why I'm not doing it. I don't want to self-sabotage.
Yeah.
and
That's her answer. She's sticking to it.
I'm sticking to it. Albert agrees with me. We finally got there. No, I'm just kidding. How did this become about me? Okay, let's move on to something else. Rick, don't you have a question for Albert? Don't you got something to say?
I was going to say one thing I love about the book is that it's a beautiful fusion of acting tips and stuff and psychology stuff, and it puts it all together. But also, a lot of the stuff could be applied to anybody, like not just acting.
Right.
I thought it was
Exactly.
great. I think anybody could benefit from reading the book.
And that's why, even though I written the book with actors in mind, I wanted to put stuff in there that really anybody can benefit from.
Yeah, and actually there was a section, because we were just talking about this, I don't know how many broadcasts ago, about introverts and extroverts, and I was like, oh, I'm listening to this part because we just talked about that. And I was like,
Oh, I'm excited to read it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And the one, to kind of piggyback off that, the one thing that I don't want to say surprised me, but I think kind of surprised the people who are not in the industry is how introverted many actors are. They could be larger than life personalities on stage, on screen, but yet when the camera's not rolling, they can be even shy and soft-spoken or even very reserved.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah, Michael Jackson is like that. And a lot of musicians are like that too, where it's just when they're not performing, they're very soft-spoken, very quiet, and you may not see them at the parties and all of that, in the limelight. They don't like to be in the limelight, even though they're performers. They're doing it for.
Why do you think that is, though? Like, why do you feel like when they're on stage or performing, they can technically be themselves, kind of, but once those cameras are gone, they're like so reserved?
Because they're performing, it's like being in a state of flow. We call this in psychology a flow state. When you're in a state of like euphoria when you're doing something you love. So it's, in this sense, they're performing or creating art. And for them, that's what they love doing. So in their mind, they're all about the creative process and not so much about the audience, feeding off the audience. They're about really just doing what they love, which is performing. And when they're not performing, it's like they're not really at home anymore.
Okay, can I have to, so I was a dancer as a kid, and I'm smiling because I was trying not to talk, but we all know it's going to happen. But at least I let you speak for a minute, Albert. But it's true, Cynthia, when you get on stage, it's like something takes over you and you're just in that mode of creativity. You're not even thinking about it. You know what I mean? You have the butterflies beforehand, maybe thinking about it because you're about to go on. But once you're there, it's a whole other thing and it's magical. It's so magical. Like as he's talking, I was like, oh my God, yes. I love it.
Kind
I'm
of like
sorry,
me
Albert.
when I
Gotta tell you.
I broadcast every day, and I broadcast right after work, and I take care of my mom who has dementia, so that's a whole struggle in and of itself. And here it is, like about to go on, and I've had a horrible day. But when that thing goes on, ding! Now you're gonna get happy Rick, pleasant Rick, and it's not that I'm like, oh, you're being fake. No, this is who I want to be, and I'm trying to just drop the other stuff, and then it actually helps me to become the happier person I want to be when I'm doing it. So it's not fake, but it's just something that yes, I can just turn it on, but it's not because it's fake. It's just because I can just compartmentalize, like men love to do that, right? Compartmentalize the bad day, put it aside, and then smile for the camera.
Yeah, of course. It's you're developing a persona. It's like it's like the musician is doing a persona, acting or doing a character, a persona. So, but the real you can just be, soft-spoken and quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or crazy. Whatever it is, Rick. Rick is acting all demure and quiet today. Don't know why. It's very interesting to see. All right. What is something about your work that people misunderstand?
That's a very good question. I think a lot of people two things, either think we're jerks, like because we're all about the money, because you see like the ruthless agent, or that we go to parties all the time. And and I would say maybe I'll go to 1 or 2 events a year. The other time I'm working, 10, 12-hour days. So I think that's the biggest misconception is how hard we work.
Yeah, I think the other thing about agents, just from my point of view, is like, first of all, every actor that comes to Los Angeles wants an agent, and it's the hardest thing to get an actual legit agent. And a legit agent means someone who actually knows the business, can actually get you work, and doesn't charge you more than the standard. Isn't the standard 10 or 15%? It's 10% for an agent and 15% manager.
For manager, yes.
Right. But if you don't know, then, people are scamming you and, telling you all these things. And they're saying you need new headshots. You have to go to my friend, the photographer over here, and get the back end stuff. So,
of course.
Yeah. So agents get the
sleazy,
they kind of get the sleazy reputation. But the fact of the matter is you can't work in this town without an agent. You really need one, unless you are, the daughter of Steven Spielberg or somebody, unless you really do know somebody in this town. You really need an agent. So I think there's a bad reputation for agents, but agents are actually the reason why you see a lot of actors on television, the right people.
And we are caring and we are hardworking. And I think that's probably the biggest misconception, about that, is that we're called icy people, because you see like shows like Entourage, for instance, kind of demonize us a little bit.
Well, I think you are kind of icy. That's what I'm getting from this whole conversation. Is that kind of, you're so mean, and the cruelty is just coming right.
I know.
Coming right through it's bothering me a little bit, but we'll work with it. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing actors today?
I think what we just talked about, the industry, the changing industry, the changing landscape of the industry, and just the instability of the profession. It's not a 9-to-5 job. There's no guarantee of employment. There's no, we're working like in a gig economy, from gig to gig, in a sense. So you're only as good as your last gig. So it's like you still have to audition, keep auditioning. And no matter how talented you are as an actor, you're going to hear more no's than yeses.
Yeah, every day. I mean, I told these guys the reason why I stopped pursuing acting. First of all, for me, dancing and performing is very different than acting. And so everybody was like, oh, just go be an actor. And I was like, like, it's not like you just go and you just start becoming an actor, but I did study it. I did study with the best of them or whatever. But I think it's really hard to shine for me. Like going into an audition, like if you call me and you're like, you have to go into an audition and I have like an hour to get there and I'm in traffic, and then you get there and all you do is you get these sides, being able to turn that on, that's a skill all in and of itself.
Sure is. Yes.
That I don't have. I admit it right now. I just don't, you know what I mean? But the places that and Cynthia, I'm not saying it to dismiss myself. It's just not my skill set. I did it for so many years. And the thing is, it's not the rejection. I grew up being rejected. I'm good with that. What I wasn't good with was not being able to be my best because I didn't have the material for enough time, or not being secure about it because I'm not that fast with the material. But that's a whole other skill set. But what's your thought process on that, Albert? You can yell at me.
Yeah, I mean, there is sometimes a quick turnaround time. That was also part of SAG contract. The last round of negotiations was to give the actors enough time to prepare. But
that was just recent. That was just recent.
Yeah, that was recent. But I'm saying it's because of that. So that's definitely, I've had sometimes actors would get the same day appointment and there would be like 8 pages of sides.
Crazy.
Like, whoa, that's crazy.
So 8 pages of the script, Cynthia. I don't know if you know what sides are, but sides are what you're given as an actor to go into an audition. So they'll take eight pages. Well, they shouldn't do 8 pages for like if you only have an hour.
They better not. Yeah, I mean,
right. They can't do
ridiculous.
anymore. But they used to do that. Like you would get a call from your agent and they'd be like, Carmen, you have an audition like in 2 hours. Can you make it? If not, can you go after work and wait? Or, because they want you to get in, because it might be, it might be a one line on Friends or Seinfeld or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like, so, but you would get or a movie. For me, it was always a movie. And I'd be like, sure, I can make it. I'd get there and they would hand me, because remember, we're talking about, hate to date myself, but I'm about to, but we're talking about when I got here was like what? So we're talking 96, 97, 98, 2000, whatever. It's a very different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
So you would get your side, you'd drive across town, and then you would have to deliver this performance without having any background really on who the actor is. You'd have to really be on your toes. And I'm really one of those people that loves to like get into it. Like I love the best part of being an actor in this town for me has been when I have booked a role. And then the whole studying of the background and who that person is so that you can really do it justice, and find that part of yourself. And for me, it was the theater performances that I did here, I did the performance of Nickel and Dimed here at the Hudson Theater. And it was, I played 8 different characters and we had a huge cast and it was so much fun. We're all still friends, the cast, we're all still friends. But I had the ending monologue, standing ovation every night. I'm still proud of that today. See, Cynthia, I'm giving myself props.
Okay. Now, there you go. There you go.
Yeah, but that's the difference. To be an actor in any town, but especially here in LA, you really have to have some skills that I just don't have those. I don't have that skill, and I know that,
Mm-hmm.
So,
question. As far as your business, forgive my ignorance because I don't know, but is it more people seeking you out, or you seeking them, or both?
It's more of them seeking me, as far as like, as far as like seeking talent, like getting clients. Usually, actors are finding the agents. As far as the jobs, for agents and managers, there's a service called Breakdowns that comes out every day, and that has all the projects they're casting, and then they have all the roles that they're trying to fill. So that comes out daily to us. It's like a, thing that we subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on a website. We log in and we get, the day-to-day breakdowns.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever have to refuse somebody that comes to you?
Yes.
Oh, they refuse a lot of people. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, and it's not that we don't seek that out. It's not like, oh, I'm trying to refute. I can only take so many people on,
Right.
before. Otherwise, I'm not. If I had thousands of people on a roster, then all I'm doing is I'm doing the same what they say, throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what
Yep.
sticks,
Mhm.
which is not a really good job of an agent to do.
Right.
So we have to cultivate, the roster, and we also have to be selective that we don't want to have like five people looking, like each person, five of the same type. That's going to
Oh,
be into
that would be the
competition.
worst. The
Mhm.
worst is going to an audition and seeing everybody who looks exactly like you, and then realizing that four of the people there we all have the same agent. You know what I mean? It just feels
Yeah,
like, because your agent and you have a relationship. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's all about relationships. So yeah, that does stink. I hate that. But
yeah, and it's again that reminds me of that saying, throwing spaghetti into a wall hoping that sticks. Because then the agent's saying, well, I have one of the five book, and that's not a good approach to have.
Mhm.
So we have to be very selective,
mhm.
and that and typically, like for myself, I get about 100 actors a week that are submitting for representation,
That's about
and I might meet with like 5 or 10 of those out of that, maybe, and then I might sign one or two out of that,
Mhm.
if that. So it is unfortunately very saturated,
Mhm.
industry, and it's even more so in LA than New York.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So we do have to unfortunately say no. And what I often say is like it's never really a no permanently unless of course you get on my bad side, But
Right.
other than that, it's never really a no permanently. It may just be not right now. Maybe you don't have enough credits, or again I have too many people of your type, and that may change in a year.
Right. And also, there are ways for people to get auditions. I mean, I got one of my biggest roles, the one that I was cut out of after I filmed it. But that was one of the most devastating blows of my life. But I'm not bitter. But my point is I got that role on my own because Actors Access is an offshoot of Breakdowns, which is what he gets as an agent.
Yes.
So
Hmm.
agents get breakdowns, and then Actors Access, they send us the stuff they couldn't book with an agent, or stuff that doesn't matter, or stuff that they're still looking for. And then if you have a subscription as an actor, you will submit yourself. And you can do that without an agent,
100%.
and I did that, and I booked quite a few roles by myself, and then the agents come, right?
Yeah.
Then all
Well,
the agents you were
that's a
asking
great position
for.
to be in, like as an
Yeah.
actor. And I do seek people out though. Sometimes what I'll seek people out is I'll go to a show that a client is in, a theater
Mhm.
show, and then there'll be a couple other people that are like, oh, I really like this person,
Right.
and I'll ask my client, is this person, do you know if this person's rep? And if not, can you make an introduction?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
You mentioned credits. What do you mean by credits? They didn't
What I
have
mean
enough
by credits is
experience?
having like experience, like speaking roles in film and TV, even if there's like little films that no one would ever see. There's still it's still a speaking role that you got from auditioning.
Mhm.
So credit or stage. Even if it was like a black box theater, the fact that you have credits or experience on the resume, that you're
Mhm.
not just handing me a blank resume, or you're another thing that I get sometimes, unfortunately, with union members is I'll get a union member who has like 20, 200 credits. I'm not joking. Like somebody actually had 200 credits, but they're all background.
Right.
Uh,
There's nothing wrong with background. I just want to be
Nothing wrong at
There's a
all.
lot of people who make a really good living being background actors, but when you're submitting to an agent and when you're showing someone your resume, you want to show them that you've done work at actually speaking and acting in a more viable way than a background actor does.
so
Yeah.
it's just like a regular job interview. Like you didn't get the job because you don't have enough experience. But if I don't work in that, how am I going to gain the experience?
That is the trick. Mhm.
And that is definitely a paradox. I'm not going to lie. But my answer to that would be okay. Then that's when you do these student films, these short films, these
Right.
web series, these black box theater things. They may not be glamorous, and they're not going to make you rich, but at the same time, they're going to get you that experience and those connections that you're going to need.
And most times they don't even pay. So like, he said they're not going to make you rich.
Yeah, I mean that's
Right.
that's the truth.
Yeah, look I came out here, I had no credits. I had never done any acting. I performed on stage, you know what I mean, as a dancer and whatever, but I had never done any acting. But I set up a little resume, and I started applying to, you know, USC, AFI, which is the American Film Institute, you know, like all of the student films. And that's how I started. And here's the thing that people forget this stuff. All of the students at the American Film Institute, or anybody studying film at UCLA or USC, those are the directors of tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
treat them like gold, because they're the ones who are going to come back and call you, which has happened to me twice. Carmen, I'm doing a feature. You were in my student film. Will you be in this? Yes, no problem.
Mhm.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that's how it just takes a long time. And I say this, I know you're going to cringe. I'm nobody in this town, nobody. And I have credits, you know what I mean? I have decent credits, you know? So, and I haven't worked in a long time in this town, but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was an article that just came out. I forget the site of it, but there was, you know, someone who was a recurring guest star in several, you know, cable and you know, NBC shows, who her last job was February 2023, and she hasn't worked since.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is affecting a lot of people, this, you know, down
Yeah.
tick.
And
So
normally it's hard. Like normally for an
Oh,
actor,
yeah.
like in normal times, before the strikes, before all this, it was hard anyways to get work, right? I think the statistic is what, 3% of SAG actors are working on a regular basis. 3%. So that means
Wow.
most actors are not making a livable wage to get health insurance. I think you have to make, I think it's $26,000 a year on SAG to get health insurance. So
Oh,
most
God.
actors are not even making that kind of money to get health insurance. So they'll have second jobs like waiters and whatever, bookkeeping, whatever it is, right? So it's a hard business, but here's the thing: if you love it, you figure it out.
You will figure it out, and you will keep doing it, and you'll make it work. I think that's with anything. If you really love it, you know, nothing can stop you.
The reason why we have this show is because I love this town so much. Like, and I want to be a part of it. But I had to figure out my skill set. I had to figure out how I could do it, because I didn't want to be homeless. You know what I mean? Again.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna. But like Albert, I have to say, we have this in common. I love being around creative people. I love.
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes I get jealous and upset. I'm not gonna be mad, because I'm like, I am so much better than you are. Why are you making all this money? You know what I mean? When I know
Mhm.
I'd be better at it. But I do love being part of this town, and so there is an energy here. So that's what I mean by you will figure out where you fit or where you want to be in it, you know, and then you
Yeah.
create things. And because this industry is changing, everyone is pivoting, you know. This is my talk
Right.
show right here. This is my Oprah talk show right here that I've always dreamed of doing. Go ahead, Rick.
Here's a random out left field question. Have you ever had to deal with a child actor whose parents were nightmares?
That's why I don't work with too many child actors. You know, I won't. You know, if that's the case, I won't. And I can kind of tell it, like, even in the first meeting. You know, usually the problems I run into with parents is they sometimes want it more than the child does. And I'm like, you know, I can almost tell the child doesn't want to be here.
Right.
And I won't work with anybody like that, because I can't find myself doing that. But I do have a handful of children on my roster. Not a lot, you know, but a handful. And you know, it's usually because it's the parents that can sometimes get in the way.
Yeah, I was just listening to Will Wheaton, and he was like, I didn't really want to do this. My mother especially pushed me to do this. He was like, I was miserable. He did it.
Mhm.
He did the best he could, but he didn't really want to do
Yeah.
it.
You know, this is about parenting at this point. If you don't know what your child wants to do and does, and you're exploiting them, I don't care if you call it Hollywood and paying for their college, you're still exploiting them, you know?
Of course. And a lot of times these parents that are doing this are living out their own dream, not their child's dream.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Okay, looking back on your career, What is the most valuable lesson that you have learned?
Mm.
That's a very good question. I would say persistence is the key.
That is so
And
on
be very
point.
persistent in
Mhm,
doing what it is you do and have the tenacity to do it. Because even as an agent, it's very tough,
mhm.
for us. And it took me a lot of years to make some of the connections that I did with casting. And I could have easily said after 1 or 2 years of this, I'm not going to do this anymore.
Mhm.
And I think most people who would have understood me walking away,
Mhm.
but I didn't do. I just kept being persistent, and it, started paying off. Took a while, and I'm still, working hard to this day, and and trying to get my clients, day to day. So I think the biggest lesson I would say is persistence.
Mhm.
Persistent. Do you see things changing for the better or for the worse in the next 3 to 5 years? For
I can see kind of both.
yeah.
There's part of me that's saying, okay, it can get worse because of the whole AI
Mm-hmm.
threat. Because even like if the unions say, okay, we need these negotiations, we're going on strike. But now if you have AI, it's like, okay, well, where's the threat?
Right.
Um, that's what concerns me with that. But also on the other side, there's, a lot of people are making stuff on cell phones now.
Mhm.
There's a lot of studios that are being built in New Jersey and New York, even now.
Mhm.
So maybe that'll be more stuff can be made, on the lower cost. Now, the only downside with lower cost means lower wages for actors.
Yeah. Exactly. Can you tell me a little bit about your website? And again, I'm going to mess up your name, so I don't want to say it. Albert, how do you say your last name again?
Bramante.com. So it's
Yeah. So I
albertbramante.com.
noticed there's a lot of AI generated images, but this is more sound stuff? What is your
These
website?
are recordings. So
Okay.
right now my website's under construction. So you're only seeing maybe like 30 or 40% of
Okay.
what's going to be there. So I have hypnosis recordings from everything from about, anxiety to sports performance.
Mhm.
So these are like 15 to 17-minute sound clips that when you buy, you download them and you can listen to them on a daily basis, like
Can you
to
tell
your
me, because I
headphones.
don't know anything about hypnosis. So what is hypnosis and why would that work for an actor or performer or anyone in general?
Hypnosis works by targeting what we call your subconscious mind, the
Mhm.
part of you that really programs your day to day
Mhm.
life, your brain, your actions, and it's stuff that you're not fully aware of. But that's where all of your motivations come in. So what we do is we kind of put you in a flow state or a state of light relaxation or light trance and work in reprogramming some of the beliefs that you have, limiting beliefs that you might have, so that you can be a better, performer. Now, it's not going to make you a better actor. It's not like, because it doesn't replace acting training. Nothing will except acting training.
Yeah,
But what it
for
will
real.
make you do is get you out of your head
Mhm.
and stop second guessing yourself
Mhm.
so
Another.
that you'll become a much better you
Mhm.
than you'll ever be, than you ever were.
Mhm.
So I can guarantee you that's going to help an actor book more work.
Another thing in the book you talked about was affirmations, which on my broadcast I
Mhm.
literally do it every single day. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's also another thing we do in trance is several affirmations, these are loop with affirmation on loop.
Mhm. Mhm. I don't know how I feel about all that stuff. I'm not into hypnosis. I think I'm a little bit afraid of it. So that'll be an
Well,
interesting
I will
conversation.
say this, and this is what I tell a lot of people who are afraid of hypnosis. You've already experienced it thousands of times already. So nothing to be afraid of.
Wait, how have I already experienced it 1,000 times already?
So let me ask you a question. You do drive. So do you ever get sometimes when you start the car and then you get to your destination and wonder where the time went?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what hypnosis is. It's like a state of
Oh.
if you ever get enthralled into a movie where you get lost, state in time, or you read a book and you get lost in the book, or
Mhm.
you listen to music and you get be transported to a memory. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's what hypnosis is. If you ever meditate, that's what hypnosis is.
Okay, that's
So
fair. I've never heard it explained that way. That
and
is
that's what when I
excellent.
explain, saying to people who are say that they're scared of them, like There's nothing to be afraid of. You already did it thousands of times already.
Yeah, well, the reason why
See,
we're afraid is because we've watched every ridiculous TV show where they hypnotize people and then they do weird, bad stuff to them.
Yep.
yeah, that's not, yeah, no. And I will definitely say a movie reference that didn't really help us, and that was Get Out, which I was like, no.
Oh yeah.
That's definitely not hypnosis.
Mm.
But it's that it is, you're right. And people are scared of it because of that. Oh, am I going to make you look like a chicken? And that's be fun to watch, but no, that's not what I'm going to do.
Right.
Um,
It'd be fun to watch, but it's not what I'm going to do.
yeah,
You can't be hypnotized at all. Is it true? Or
no, because like I said, you're hypnotized every day. Now, what is true that you can't make someone be hypnotized against their will.
Mhm.
So if you're not willing to, like if you're closed off at the moment,
Yeah.
it's
It's
not
not going to work.
not going to work. It's what your way. Because the one thing is we cannot change free will of another person.
Mm.
Something you would never ordinarily do. You can't force somebody to do.
Exactly. If you're morally opposed to doing it, no.
Yeah.
But usually the people that are seeking out of services want to change their life.
Mhm.
So they want to change something.
Mhm.
And sometimes they're like the last resort.
Right.
Hmm.
Interesting.
All right. Well, I'm gonna close this down. It has been an interesting conversation. That was
Well,
much
thank
more
you.
fun
Yeah.
than I thought.
This has been one of
Um,
the most interesting guests I've been on. So
I'm sorry, Rick. What'd you say?
I said I almost feel like this is part one.
I feel like
I
this is
know,
part
right?
one too. I mean, you know what? I mean,
well,
here's
I'm
the thing.
open to whenever comes
Well,
back.
I
I'd love to come
feel
back.
like we should have you come back. We'll do it soon so we can have a part 2 and kind of get more in
Absolutely.
depth. Is that fair?
That sounds great. I'd love to.
Okay. Well, everyone, thank you so much. Please remember that we have our show on Friday nights at what time, Rick? I always forget.
6 Pacific.
6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then always on Sundays, our private lounges air at 12 o'clock Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And remember, at the end of the day, it really is all about the
All
joy.
about the
Bye, everyone. And
joy.
thank
I love
you,
that.
Albert. Albert's going to be back, so we ain't saying bye to him forever. Bye.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for stopping by All About the Joy. Be better and stay beautiful, folks. Have a sweet day.